Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is honestly the ultimate internet paradox of our time. Jimmy Donaldson, better known as MrBeast. I mean, think about it. He's got over 300 million subscribers. He's literally given away hundreds of millions of dollars. By every conceivable metric, he's the biggest creator on the planet. And yet, this whole crazy empire, it all started just because a 13-year-old boy was way too scared to talk to people. And, that paradox is really the whole story here. Jimmy's early life definitely wasn't some fairy tale. His parents were in an abusive relationship, and they divorced back in 2007 when he was just 9 years old. So the house was really quiet, and Jimmy ended up being alone a lot. He poured all of his energy into baseball, like absolutely obsessed with it. But the sad part is, even on the field, surrounded by his teammates, he wasn't really there. He'd keep his baseball cap pulled way down over his face just so nobody would look at him. He had no friends, and honestly, he just didn't want to talk to anyone.
Okay, let's look at this number for a second. 300 million. Just trying to wrap your head around that scale is tough. The visual whiplash from that isolated kid hiding under a hat to this global icon who commands the attention of hundreds of millions of people, it's absolutely staggering. So how exactly do you cross a gap that massive? Well, as we'll see, it wasn't an accident, and it for sure wasn't just luck.
All right, section 1, turning grief into fuel.
To really understand this massive leap, we have to kind of reframe how we look at his childhood bedroom. It wasn't just a place to hide. It literally became his laboratory. Right around age 15, everything changed for him. Doctors diagnosed him with Crohn's disease. And if you're not familiar, that is a seriously painful inflammatory condition, and it's not something that just goes away. It permanently ended his obsessive baseball career. Bam, gone. The one physical thing he had in the world that actually made him feel like himself was suddenly just snatched away. So here he is, 15 years old, having to genuinely grieve that huge loss. But instead of letting it paralyze him, he actually turned that grief into fuel. Because that's when he found YouTube. He started watching gamers play Minecraft and Call of Duty, and man, that obsessive energy just completely transferred over. When he was 12, he watched his favorite gamer quit his normal job to make videos full-time, and it just clicked for Jimmy. He realized, that's exactly what I want to do. So he started grinding. And I mean grinding. We're talking filming on a genuinely terrible 480p Windows phone and editing on his brother's borrowed laptop. He had zero studio gear, no unfair advantages. He was doing all of this locked in his bedroom because YouTube had basically become his entire world.
Moving on to section 2, cracking the YouTube algorithm. So over time, this obsession of his evolved. He went from just a kid making faceless gaming videos to literally studying the platform the way other kids studied for the SATs. Except, Jimmy actually cared about this stuff. When he turned 17, he sat his mom down and told her straight up that he wanted to do YouTube full-time. Now his mom, who had raised 2 kids alone, gave him a pretty standard ultimatum. Go to college or get out of my house. So what did Jimmy do? He pretends to go to college. Yeah, he'd leave the house, come back, and just secretly work on his videos.
And it was an absolute grind. By 2015, he was making all sorts of weird experimental videos. Like, I'm talking spending an entire video just trying to cut a table in half with plastic knives. He had uploaded over 400 videos at that point. 400. And the vast majority of them had gone absolutely nowhere. But then, one day, Jimmy had an idea so absurd it almost sounds like a joke. He sat down in his room, turned his camera on, and just started counting, out loud, from $1 to $100,000. It took him an agonizing 40 hours. He uploaded the video, and wild enough, in the first 5 days, 5 million people watched a teenager count to 100,000. No way, right? But that viral success, it cracked open a fundamental truth that would completely define his career from that moment on. And it's this: on YouTube, ordinary simply doesn't work. You have to do things that are so weirdly specific, so totally unbelievable, and so interesting that people physically cannot scroll past them. He realized that the sheer extremity of the effort was actually the product itself.
Which brings us to section 3, building a billion-dollar empire. So this realization didn't just get him views, it birthed a literal empire. We're talking Feastables chocolate, the View Stats analytics tool, and a massive Amazon Prime deal that pushed his personal net worth right past $1 billion. But the real core pillar of all of this, his viral philanthropy. Let's rewind to 2017. A company called Quid offered him $5,000 for a brand deal. Jimmy, being Jimmy, countered at $10,000, got it, and then he gave that entire $10,000 away to homeless people on the street. it completely exploded. So he escalated things. He gave 10 grand to random Twitch streamers, then to a pizza delivery guy, and then, in this beautiful stroke of irony, he gave his mom $100,000 to pay off her house, the exact same mom who once told him to leave if he wasn't going to college.
And this whole escalation brilliantly illustrates his psychological mastery over his audience. He wasn't relying on, slick Hollywood charisma, he was relying on structural data analysis. He figured out the perfect formula. Show the prize immediately, explain the rules later, and deliver the hook long before you even start explaining the story. This chart right here really explains his rapid-fire editing style. It's driven by one really harsh reality. Between 30 to 50% of viewers will just click away in the very first minute of a video. He became totally obsessed with that single metric. He knew he literally had seconds to hook you, or boom, you were gone. It's a purely 100% analytical approach to capturing human attention. Which leads us to Section 4, surviving internet allegations. Of course, a highly analytical mind eventually has to face its ultimate test. In mid-2024, a major crisis blew up when a former employee named Dawson French posted a video with some pretty severe allegations, basically claiming Jimmy faked his content and his philanthropy. And man, the internet just ran with it. The video hit 10 million views, brand deals were getting canceled, boycotts were trending, and all those people who already doubted his too-good-to-be-true persona suddenly felt super validated. Now, your typical creator in a panic? They'll go live immediately, start screaming, get hyper-defensive, but Jimmy's strategy was entirely different. He just waited. He stayed totally quiet while third-party channels systematically walked through the claims and debunked them. Then, and only when the moment was perfectly right, he sat down for a 2-hour conversation and addressed every single allegation methodically, calmly, and brought the receipts. Ultimately, his accuser largely faded from the conversation, and Jimmy's channel, it just kept right on growing. Finally, Section 5, the fear of being seen.
And this really brings our narrative full circle. Think back to that paradox we started with. This entire global phenomenon, the billions of dollars, the massive philanthropy, the whole shebang was built by a boy who couldn't even say 2 words to a real person without wanting to just disappear. He pulled his hat down so nobody would look at him. But sitting alone with a terrible phone and a borrowed laptop, he found a camera, and he talked to it instead.
So I really want to leave you with this thought. How many people out there have something truly enormous inside them, something that could completely change their own lives and the lives of millions of others, and the absolute only thing standing in their way is the fear of being seen? Really, think about that. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.